In the beginning, before there was a kingdom, there were only tribes, Celts, Picts, and Britons scattered across a mist-covered island at the edge of the known world, a land that would one day be called the United Kingdom. The Romans came first, led by Julius Caesar's ambitions and Emperor Claudius's legions, bringing roads, walls, and Latin law to a people who had never known empire. They built Londinium, planted the seeds of civilization, and left behind walls like Hadrian's to guard against the fierce northern tribes. But when Rome fell, its shadow withdrew and Britain was left fractured once more. The Saxons and Angles swept in from across the sea, pushing the native Britons westward into the mountains of Wales and Cornwall. Kingdoms rose and fell, Mercia, Wessex, Northumbria, each fighting for survival and supremacy. It was a patchwork of crowns until one man, Alfred the Great, dreamed of unity. He fought the Vikings, educated his people, and laid the foundation for something that would endure far beyond his own lifetime: the idea of one England. The Normans came next in 1066 when William the Conqueror crossed the Channel from France and defeated King Harold at Hastings. It was the beginning of Norman rule, castles of stone replacing wooden forts, French words blending into English tongues, and a feudal order that would shape the land for centuries. The crown became a symbol of authority, yet also a burden of endless conflict, with barons, with the church, with the people themselves. In 1215, when King John's arrogance exceeded the limits of even his nobles' patience, they forced him to seal the Magna Carta at Runnymede, the birth of accountability, the first whisper of democracy. The Middle Ages unfolded with both beauty and brutality. Cathedrals rose toward heaven while plague swept through the streets. The Black Death claimed millions, yet from the ashes of despair came transformation. Serfs gained power, cities grew, and the spark of modern society began to flicker. The Wars of the Roses tore England apart once again, as rival houses of Lancaster and York fought for the crown in a brutal civil war that left the nation bloodied but wiser. When Henry Tudor emerged victorious in 1485 and became Henry VII, he founded a new dynasty, the Tudors, a family whose passions, politics, and power would redefine England. His son, Henry VIII, was a man of immense ambition and uncontrollable desire. When the Pope denied his wish for divorce, Henry broke from Rome and founded the Church of England, severing the last great chain that bound England to the Old World. Religion divided Europe, but it also empowered monarchs. And under Henry's daughter, Elizabeth I, England entered its golden age. The Elizabethan era saw poets like Shakespeare give words to the English soul, while explorers like Francis Drake circled the globe under the red-crossed flag of St. George. Spain's mighty armada failed to conquer them, and the English, once an island people, became a maritime power. The seas called them outward, toward trade, adventure, and empire. Yet even glory had its shadows. After Elizabeth's death in 1603, the crown passed to her cousin, James VI of Scotland, uniting England and Scotland under one king. Thus was born the first true vision of the United Kingdom, though the journey toward union would be long and painful. The Stuart kings that followed faced storms of their own, not of weather but of politics. The English Civil War erupted in the 1640s, when King Charles IX's belief in divine right clashed with Parliament's demand for liberty. Brothers fought brothers, cities burned. For the first time in history, an English king was executed by his own people, and the monarchy fell. In its place rose Oliver Cromwell and his Puritan Commonwealth, a brief experiment in republican rule that would collapse under its own sternness. When the monarchy returned with Charles II, and later the Glorious Revolution of 1688 placed William and Mary on the throne, England emerged with a new balance of power, a constitutional monarchy, where kings ruled but parliaments governed. This compromise would become one of Britain's greatest legacies to the world, the blueprint for democracy. Meanwhile, across the seas, British merchants and soldiers were sowing the seeds of empire. The East India Company, founded in 1600, began as a trading venture but evolved into an empire within an empire, commanding armies and annexing territories. Colonies sprouted in the Caribbean, North America, and Africa. By the 1700s, Britain's navy dominated the oceans, its red ensigns flying from every horizon. But empires breed rivals, and none was greater than France. The 7 Years' War, 1756-1763, was fought on multiple continents, and when it ended, Britain emerged as the world's preeminent power, though victory came at a cost. In the American colonies, resentment grew toward the taxes imposed by a distant king. No taxation without representation, they cried, and by 1776 the colonies had rebelled. The loss of America was a wound to Britain's pride, yet in losing it, Britain learned a new lesson, that its strength was not only in conquest, but in adaptation. In the late 18th and early 19th centuries, Britain transformed itself once again, this time not through swords or treaties, but through machines. The Industrial Revolution began in its factories and coal mines, in the steam engines of James Watt and the spinning jennies of Lancashire. It changed everything. Cities swelled, railways linked nations, and the pace of life quickened beyond imagination. Britain became the workshop of the world, producing goods, weapons, and ideas that reached every shore. But industrial progress came with human cost: child labor, pollution, poverty. Social reformers like Charles Dickens used their pens to awaken conscience, while others sought to extend democracy to the working class. The 19th century was Britain's century. Its empire expanded to India, Australia, Africa, and beyond. London became the heart of a global network that stretched from Canada to New Zealand. The sun, they said, never set on the British Empire, and it was true. From the glittering palaces of India to the deserts of Africa, British influence was everywhere. Yet even as it reached its peak, cracks began to show. Ireland's long struggle for independence simmered, and the inequalities of empire grew harder to ignore. The Victorian era, named for Queen Victoria herself, was both an age of moral restraint and scientific wonder. Under her reign, Britain achieved unmatched global dominance. Railroads in India, telegraphs under the Atlantic, explorers charting Africa's heart. But new ideas challenged old beliefs. Darwin's theory of evolution questioned creation, while Marx and industrial laborers questioned capitalism itself. The empire was vast, but its soul was restless. Beneath the veneer of stability, change was coming, political, social, and revolutionary. And with the dawn of the 20th century, the empire that had ruled the world would be tested as never before. As the 19th century drew onward, the British Empire seemed eternal, stretching across continents and oceans, binding half the globe beneath its flag. In London, the hum of progress never ceased. Trains roared through tunnels, ships filled the Thames, and new inventions transformed daily life. Steam, steel, and science had made Britain the workshop of the world, but its empire was more than industry. It was ideology. The Victorians believed in a mission, the so-called civilizing of others, a justification for empire that masked both greed and paternalism. Missionaries carried the Bible where merchants carried muskets, and administrators carved borders across lands they barely understood. Yet even within Britain, debates raged. Reformers, abolitionists, and thinkers like John Stuart Mill questioned what it truly meant to be civilized. By the mid-1800s, slavery had been abolished across the empire, a moral victory that cost fortune and favor but revealed a conscience beneath the crown. Meanwhile, the Irish suffered under famine and oppression, their struggle for self-rule deepening resentment between the two islands. Still, the empire marched onward. Victoria became Empress of India in 1876, symbolizing the unity of a realm that was, in truth, held together by fragile threads of trade, power, and loyalty. The British Empire at its zenith governed nearly 1 in 4 people on Earth, but empires, like all living things, carry the seeds of their own decline. As the 20th century dawned, clouds gathered over Europe. Rivalries that had simmered beneath the surface erupted into the Great War of 1914. Britain entered World War I with confidence, its empire providing soldiers from across the world. Indians, Canadians, Australians, Africans, all fighting under one flag. The trenches of France turned confidence into horror. The world's first industrialized war swallowed millions of lives in mud and steel. When the war ended in 1918, victory came at a cost too heavy to measure. Britain had survived, but its spirit was scarred. The old certainties of empire, of monarchy, of moral destiny began to crumble. In Ireland, rebellion turned to independence and the island was divided, creating Northern Ireland and the Irish Free State. Across the empire, whispers of self-determination grew louder. The interwar years were marked by both brilliance and struggle. Art, literature, and science flourished, yet poverty and political tension deepened. The Great Depression struck hard, unemployment soared, and the working class demanded change. Then came 1939. Germany invaded Poland, and once more Britain stood at the crossroads of history. Under the unyielding leadership of Winston Churchill, Britain faced the storm of the Second World War. For 6 long years, bombs fell, cities burned, and the world trembled. The Blitz tested the resolve of ordinary people, yet they endured with quiet heroism. "We shall never surrender," Churchill declared, and those words became the heartbeat of a nation. The empire again rallied. Soldiers from every corner of the world fought side by side to defeat tyranny. When victory came in 1945, Britain stood among the victors, but its empire had grown weary. The war had drained its coffers and humbled its pride. The colonies it once ruled now demanded freedom. India, the jewel of the crown, gained independence in 1947, marking the beginning of the end of empire. One by one, the colonies followed suit, until the sun that once never set upon the British Empire began to dip below the horizon. Yet even as the empire dissolved, the United Kingdom found a new identity, not as a ruler of nations, but as a partner in peace. The Commonwealth replaced the empire, a family of sovereign states bound not by chains but by shared history. The post-war years were years of rebuilding. Bombed cities rose again, powered by new optimism. Under the welfare reforms of leaders like Clement Attlee, Britain built a safety net for its citizens: healthcare, education, housing. The creation of the National Health Service in 1948 was a revolution of compassion, a promise that every citizen, rich or poor, would be cared for. Yet the years that followed were not without hardship. Rationing continued into the 1950s, and the nation's place in the world seemed uncertain. The Suez Crisis of 1956 shattered illusions of global dominance when Britain's attempt to control the Suez Canal ended in diplomatic humiliation. The empire was gone, and the age of superpowers, America and the Soviet Union, had begun. But Britain endured, reinventing itself not through empire but through culture, innovation, and resilience. The 1960s brought a new kind of revolution, one of music, art, and freedom. The Beatles, the Rolling Stones, and British fashion turned London into the center of a global cultural explosion. Britain's influence was no longer measured in miles of empire but in songs, films, and ideas that resonated across the world. Meanwhile, the monarchy itself evolved. Queen Elizabeth II, who ascended the throne in 1952, became the face of continuity in an age of change. Through decades of transformation, decolonization, technological revolutions, and shifting social values, she remained a steady presence, symbolizing the unity of a modern constitutional monarchy. The late 20th century saw new challenges. Economic recessions tested the country's endurance. The 1970s brought strikes, inflation, and political instability, culminating in the rise of Margaret Thatcher, Britain's first female prime minister. Her tenure divided opinion. She crushed unions, privatized industries, and redefined Britain's economy. To some, she restored pride. To others, she deepened inequality, yet even her fiercest critics could not deny her impact. The Falklands War in 1982 reignited patriotic fervor, and Britain proved that its military resolve still burned strong. In the final years of the century, the United Kingdom faced questions not of power, but of identity. Scotland and Wales gained devolved governments in the late 1990s, granting them local control over many affairs. Northern Ireland, long torn by sectarian conflict, found fragile peace in the Good Friday Agreement of 1998, a triumph of diplomacy that ended decades of bloodshed known as the Troubles. Britain entered the new millennium as a different kind of power, smaller in empire but rich in legacy. Its language had become global, its culture influential beyond measure, and its democracy, though imperfect, a model for others. The monarchy adapted, the government evolved, and the people continued to balance tradition with progress. As the dawn of the 21st century broke, the United Kingdom stood on the edge of a new world, one no longer defined by empire or industry, but by technology, communication, and globalization. The internet connected its people to every corner of the planet, and Britain, though small in size, remained vast in influence. London became a global hub once again, not of colonies and cargo, but of culture, finance, and ideas. Yet beneath the modern skyline, the echoes of history remained. The castles, the cathedrals, and the cobbled streets that whispered stories of kings and commoners alike. The new millennium brought both pride and pressure. The Labour government under Tony Blair ushered in reforms in education and social services, but also led the nation into the controversial Iraq War of 2003, a decision that divided the public and reshaped Britain's foreign policy identity. Protests filled the streets of London, echoing the same restless energy that had challenged kings centuries before. At home, Britain was a nation constantly redefining itself, multicultural, diverse, and forward-looking. Immigration from across the Commonwealth and the European Union infused new life and complexity into British society. Cities like London, Birmingham, and Manchester became mosaics of cultures, languages, and dreams. The once mighty empire had transformed into a meeting ground of the world it once ruled. Yet this diversity also raised questions of identity. What did it truly mean to be British in the 21st century? The monarchy continued to symbolize continuity, yet it too faced scrutiny in a changing age of media and transparency. The death of Princess Diana in 1997 had already shaken the royal family, exposing a new emotional bond between the people and their monarchy, one built less on reverence and more on shared humanity. Queen Elizabeth II adapted with grace, maintaining quiet dignity even as tabloids and cameras followed her family's every step. The 2000s were years of progress and paradox. Britain embraced technology and digital culture. Universities thrived and science flourished. Yet social inequality persisted, and regions once powered by factories now struggled to find their place in a service-driven economy. The financial crisis of 2008 hit hard, shaking confidence in institutions once thought unshakable. Still, resilience was in Britain's blood. The same island that had endured plagues, wars, and invasions weathered another storm with its typical stoicism. The following decade brought new voices, new challenges, and new debates about Britain's role in the world. The rise of Scottish nationalism reignited discussions about unity. In 2014, Scotland held a referendum on independence. The question was simple, but the emotions were not. The Scots chose to remain within the United Kingdom, but the close result left a nation questioning its own identity. 2 years later, another decision would shake the world: Brexit. In 2016, the United Kingdom voted narrowly to leave the European Union, ending decades of political and economic partnership with its neighbors. The vote exposed deep divisions between young and old, cities and countryside, England and Scotland. Supporters saw it as a return to sovereignty, a reclamation of independence. Opponents saw it as isolation, a retreat from unity. The years that followed were marked by uncertainty, negotiation, and political turmoil. Prime ministers came and went: David Cameron, Theresa May, Boris Johnson, each facing the same question that had haunted British leaders for centuries. What does it mean to lead a nation forever balancing between tradition and transformation? Brexit became more than a policy. It was a mirror reflecting the contradictions of modern Britain, a country proud of its past yet unsure of its future. Through it all, Britain continued to project influence not by conquest but by creation. Its universities remained world leaders. Its culture exported through music, film, and literature. The Harry Potter saga, British rock and television series like Sherlock and The Crown, carried British storytelling to every screen and soul across the globe. The English language, born of so many invasions and evolutions, had become the world's lingua franca, perhaps Britain's greatest empire of all, one that required no army to maintain. Yet the 2020s would bring challenges no history book could have predicted. The COVID-19 pandemic struck, emptying the same bustling streets that had survived the Blitz. London once again fell silent, but not defeated. Scientists from Oxford developed one of the world's leading vaccines, proving that Britain's legacy of innovation still burned bright. The crisis reminded the world of both its fragility and its unity, themes that had defined Britain's journey since its earliest days. Socially, the nation wrestled with its history. Movements for racial equality, gender rights, and climate awareness gained momentum, demanding reckoning with the past and responsibility for the future. Statues of colonial figures were debated and sometimes removed, as the public engaged in a national conversation about empire, identity, and justice. It was not an attempt to erase history, but to understand it. Britain, the former ruler of a quarter of the earth, was now learning to confront the moral weight of that power. Yet even in self-examination there was resilience. The United Kingdom continued to lead in humanitarian efforts, science, and diplomacy. Its artists, thinkers, and innovators defined new eras of progress. The monarchy faced generational change as Prince Charles ascended to the throne as King Charles III. Following the death of Queen Elizabeth II in 2022, the end of the longest reign in British history. Her passing marked more than a royal transition. It symbolized the end of an age. For 7 decades, she had been the steady pulse of a changing world. Her death was mourned globally, a testament to the quiet strength of her legacy. As Britain moved forward, the same question that echoed through its 1,000-year history remained: what holds this union together? England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, 4 nations, 1 state, each with its own identity, pride, and pain, yet bound by shared destiny. Devolution had granted local power, but debates over independence and unity continued. Economically, the country adjusted to life beyond the European Union, seeking new trade routes and alliances. Culturally, it thrived as one of the most creative nations on earth. The spirit of Shakespeare, Newton, and Darwin lived on, not in castles or crowns, but in classrooms, laboratories, and theaters. The digital revolution transformed industries. Artificial intelligence, green energy, and biotechnology became the new engines of progress. Through all this, Britain's gift to the world endured. Not empire or might, but the idea of governance by consent, of freedom through law, of creativity born from diversity. It had once conquered nations. Now it sought to inspire them. And so, as the 21st century marches onward, the United Kingdom finds itself standing not at the height of empire, nor in the ashes of decline, but at a crossroads of reflection and renewal. From the mist-covered hills of the Scottish Highlands to the bustling markets of London, from the quiet Welsh valleys to the rugged shores of Northern Ireland, every corner of this kingdom carries stories carved by centuries of struggle and triumph. Its people have faced plagues and wars, revolutions and renaissances, industrial might and digital dawns, and through it all they have never ceased to adapt. The modern Britain that greets the world today is neither the conqueror nor the conquered. It is a nation defined by resilience, by its ability to reinvent itself again and again. The same island that once forged swords now forges ideas. Ideas of democracy, liberty, equality, and human rights. Ideas that have traveled farther and lasted longer than any empire ever could. The Houses of Parliament still echo with debate. Big Ben still tolls for each passing hour as if marking the heartbeat of a restless democracy that refuses to grow silent. Yet this new era brings challenges unlike any before. Climate change gnaws at the coasts, demanding leadership built not on conquest but on conscience. The question of national unity remains alive. Scotland whispers once more of independence, Northern Ireland balances peace and identity, and England wrestles with the weight of its history. But there is strength in the debate itself. For what other nation argues so passionately over who it is and still remains whole? The very noise of disagreement is proof of freedom, proof that the spirit of the Magna Carta, signed more than 8 centuries ago, still breathes in the British soul. In classrooms, children learn not only of kings and queens, but of scientists, poets, and activists who dared to change their world. Newton and Darwin, Austen and Dickens, Churchill and Pankhurst. Their legacy is not marble statues, but minds awakened, ideas that continue to shape civilizations. As technology weaves humanity ever closer, Britain's identity has grown both smaller and greater, smaller in geography perhaps, but greater in imagination. Its culture continues to ripple through global consciousness, from fashion and film to literature and language. The same creativity that built Shakespeare's globe now fills digital screens across continents. British universities lead discoveries in medicine, physics, and climate science, carrying forward that unbroken line of curiosity that once sparked the Industrial Revolution. And amid the swirl of progress, the crown still glimmers, not as a symbol of domination but of endurance. The monarchy, older than most nations, evolves with each generation, balancing ceremony with service. King Charles III now stands where his mother once stood, facing a world that demands transparency and empathy. In that fragile balance between past and present lies the secret of Britain's longevity. Its monarchy changes so that the nation may remain the same, and the nation changes so that the monarchy may endure. The pandemic years reminded every citizen that even an island is not isolated, that compassion and science, courage and community are what truly define strength. When London's streets fell silent, it was the doctors, nurses, and everyday heroes who carried forward the ancient spirit once embodied by knights and sailors. And when the silence lifted, it revealed a country humbled yet hopeful, aware that greatness is no longer measured in empire, but in empathy. The United Kingdom today is a nation of paradoxes, ancient yet modern, small yet mighty, proud yet self-critical, traditional yet endlessly inventive. It stands at the crossroads of history and destiny, its flag not as a banner of conquest but as a tapestry of journeys, Anglo-Celtic immigrant, dreamer, all stitched together by shared endurance. Looking toward the future, Britain's story remains unwritten. The challenges of automation, inequality, and global diplomacy loom large, but so do opportunities for renewal. The Green Revolution offers a chance to lead again, not through exploitation of the earth but through its preservation. Innovation, once driven by coal and steam, now turns toward wind, wave, and solar light. The same creative fire that lit the furnaces of Manchester now powers laboratories in Cambridge, startups in London, and artists in Edinburgh. The youth of Britain, diverse and connected, carry the torch of a nation that has forever refused to stand still. They tweet, protest, create, and dream, heirs to 1,000 years of rebellion and rebirth. And so the story of the United Kingdom is not the tale of a fall from glory, but of transformation without end. It began in blood and battle, found purpose in empire, and now seeks wisdom in unity. It has given the world the English language, parliamentary democracy, and a relentless belief that even the smallest island can move the tides of history. When the sun finally set on its empire, it rose again in the hearts of its people, in every thinker, artist, scientist, and citizen who dared to ask what comes next. The castles may crumble, the coins may change, the flags may fade, but the idea of Britain, bold, questioning, unbroken, endures. From the first tribes that lit fires on its cliffs to the satellites that now orbit above them, Britain's journey is the story of human endurance itself, to fall, to rise, to dream anew. And perhaps that is the true gift of the United Kingdom to the world, the courage to face change not as an ending, but as the very heartbeat of existence.